While assessing essential creative skills may seem daunting, this course will prepare you regardless of the age of your students or the subject you teach. Begin by thinking about how your feedback will help students develop their creative skills and how you will assess their progress. When you provide students with feedback on essential skills, you are doing much more than just assigning a grade. In fact, assessing creative essential skills thoughtfully can ensure that students fully understand their strengths and emerging skills in ways that will help them be successful after they leave your classroom. There are 3 elements to consider in instructor-driven assessment or feedback. Is it holistic and retrospective? You should comment on the student's process, not just their final outcome. Being process-oriented helps students to develop a growth mindset. Is it behavior-oriented? You can highlight how students approached challenges and responded to earlier feedback by highlighting what worked well and any areas for change. Finally, is it content-oriented? Feedback should reflect a student's understanding of content knowledge, as well as higher-order thinking and skills like the 4 C's. Many educators choose to use rubrics that are flexible, help communicate clear expectations, highlight essential creative skills, and give specific feedback. There are teaching resources and full rubrics on the Adobe Education Exchange for you to adapt for your needs. Now let us hear from educators who have had success assessing creative skills in their courses.
Assessment has always been a way to provide feedback and encourage growth and positive forward movement with my students. And for me, creativity has always meant originality, mental agility, flexibility, and this idea of measuring how we can communicate ideas and emotion clearly to an audience. So how are we going to assess this in our classes? So I think it's important to separate technical skills from the ideas and the intent of the project. Secondly, I think it's important to assess in small steps throughout the process along the way, rather than one high-stakes grade at the end of a project. I think it's also important that we avoid giving points for everything. In fact, I think the main point here is that we want to encourage the overall impact rather than any specific technical skill, because we want to encourage a creative mindset that transcends any specific skill or any specific assignment.
So there are a ton of ways that we can help students to be able to develop essential creativity skills. One is being present with students and their ideas, getting an understanding of the things that they're passionate about, and being able to help them explore and creating opportunities that leverage the things that your students are passionate about. Are they passionate about audio design? Are they passionate about video creation, photography? How can you take those things that your students are very comfortable with or enjoy being able to do and be able to incorporate those things within the classroom? That's something that I encourage everyone to really think about. Another thing is thinking about feedback and how you're giving students feedback. When it comes to creativity, feedback is an essential thing that you can be able to bring into your classroom to be able to help support students, giving them those feedback loops so that they can learn, so that they can discover how they can improve the work that they're doing. It can be invaluable. And then the last thing I would encourage you to really think about is how do you model creativity for your students?
Do away with transactional grading. That is one of the biggest killers of creativity. I turn this thing in, you give me payment in the way of grades. Instead, you could concentrate on meeting one-on-one with each student within a period of time, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, with rubrics in hand and with evidence that shows competency toward whatever the standards are that you're working toward. So that it actually is based on competency, but it's also based on process and learning, more than it's based on students worrying about their grades. And it becomes something of a collaborative process when students get a say in their particular assessment. You'll find really good, powerful conversations come out of meeting one-on-one with students. And oftentimes we'll bring in a teammate that will also bring some evidence of competency if we need to in those conversations. It feels like a really fair and productive way of using assessment to look at creative skills.
The way I used to assess big creative projects, both in my K12 classroom and in my higher education classrooms, was by making sure that students knew what content they got right or applied correctly, what creative new thinking they showed me that was unique to them, and what behaviors they exhibited that led them to these incredible projects and outcomes, so that they could really pull forward that which they did into any other part of their life. For example, if a student exhibited the behavior of reflection and iteration really well, I made sure to really emphasize that in a one-on-one meeting with them, or in a rubric response, or in a written response to them. Whereas if a student was super creative and expressive, I made sure to really bring out those strengths so that students know those strengths about themselves and were able to use them in other classes and in their future career.
What you measure matters and sends a strong message to your students. As you prepare students with essential creative skills, plan both formative and summative assessments that give them valuable feedback on developing and applying these skills, as well as on their development of content knowledge. I ask students to wrestle with problems where there's no one right answer or right approach. I look for then multiple ideas and solutions. I'm interested in the synthesis of ideas in novel ways. I look for work that shows imagination in the application of their knowledge and that shows innovative ways of communicating. What you celebrate and model matters as well. My high school teacher used to read the best essay aloud every week in class. And every week it was the same student's essay. This teacher perhaps inadvertently set a very narrow target for us as other students in the class and didn't actually help us get there. I try to celebrate product and process and progress and ask students to self-reflect on the essential skills that matter within a particular assignment, skills like creative problem solving or iteration or communication.
Assessment should be part of the whole learning process, not just a test at the end of a unit. It is important to provide a range of assessment models throughout the unit, including self and peer assessment options, group work projects, and reflections that can come in the form of creative multimedia publications. At the start of a unit, it's important for the teacher to know what the students already understand in the form of a diagnostic or pre-assessment. This allows a teacher to determine in advance the learner's individual strengths, weaknesses, knowledge, and skills. It's a great way to help guide the planning of lessons and curriculum content.